like to welcome everybody to National Disability Employment Awareness Month and to Barrier Breakers, a panel that we're really excited to give you this year to celebrate some amazing people we know who have built amazing careers and are also professionals living with disabilities. So I'd like to introduce, my name is Lynn Wehrman. I am the founder and president of Digital Accessibility by WeCo. And I usually moderate these things, but I'm happy to say that we have a new moderator this year who is our event coordinator, Paul Day, and he will be leading the panel today. Paul also is a lead accessibility analyst at Visa. So he really brings a wealth of information to our events as somebody who works in digital accessibility, as a professional living with a disability, as a person of color. That has been a wonderful, wonderful learning mix for us. Plus, we're great friends with Paul and we enjoy having him with us. So with that, Paul, I will just sit back and let you take over.
Thank you, Lynn. I would like to start by welcoming everybody to our Barrier Breakers celebration of Disability Awareness Employment Month. And this year it's in honor of Disability Awareness Month. WeCo is leading this celebration and bringing to you professionals who are breaking barriers by creating successful careers. I would like to thank our sponsor and friend, Digital Accessibility by WeCo, for first putting this event together and allowing me to bring such a great panel to you guys today and hosting it. So with that being said, I'm going to start by introducing everyone that's on our panel today. I'm going to introduce Dr. Andre Watson, who will be joining us via a pre-recorded interview that I did with him earlier because he's unavailable to join us today. Dr. Andre Watson is a clinical psychologist at Your Vision for Life and Psychology Services. He is also a friend of mine that I grew up with in high school, so I got to see some of his journey and some of his struggles. Next, we have Paul Pringhofer, who was a program and systems analyst for well-known organizations like the University of Minnesota and Control Data Corporation. He has also been an adaptive high school sports officiant for the past 40 years. Our next panelist, we have, let's see, it is Carrie Salzberg, who works as an independent living manager at the Metropolitan Center of Independent Living. Hello, Carrie. Would you like to quickly say hello to the panelists?
Hello, everyone. Hi, thank you for having me today. I'm looking forward to talking about my employment journey.
And Paul, sorry about that. I should have given you an opportunity to say hello as well. I know us great Pauls must stick together. Best name in the world, right? Go ahead and into.
I agree, Paul. And again, I want to thank you folks for inviting me to be part of this today. And I'm really excited to hear what the other panelists have to say.
Awesome. And last but not at all least is Jeremy Whelan. He is a facility service lead at General Mills. Hello, Jeremy. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. Yeah, I am humbled by the other folks who are on the panel. They actually have accomplished significantly more than I have. So just thank you guys so much for allowing me to talk.
Awesome. Okay, guys. So I want to start digging deep and sort of getting all this great information that I know is bottled up inside of you guys and out there to the public to help them along. So let's start with Carrie. Carrie, can you briefly talk about your career and education journey?
Sure. So I have a psychology degree. I have a master's in nonprofit administration. I currently work for Metropolitan Center for Independent Living, and my job is to specifically work with people who are working with vocational rehab services on helping them break down barriers to employment. So my my journey to get here was kind of twisty turny. I had originally intended to become a counselor with my psychology degree, but then with my disability, I encountered some health issues after college that kind of changed my physical abilities a bit. So I ended up where I am now, just kind of through a lot of volunteering, a lot of networking, and I'm just really glad to be in a position where I'm able to help people with disabilities navigate their own paths to employment.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. Mr. Paul, I'll call you Mr. Paul, or is there another way that you want me to differentiate yourself from me? Perfect. Mr. Paul, could you share that briefly share with us your career journey? It sounds like a very long career path. I'm sure you have a lot to share with us.
Yes. Well, my first of all, my educational background was kind of interesting. I was able to get a scholarship to go to a school called Control Data Institute. This was back in the early 1970s. And I went there and completed a course called Programming Technology. They didn't give grades necessarily there, but out of a class of about 30 people, I had the third highest percentile, I guess is what they called it. After graduating from there, I worked for a very small software firm for about a year and got let go and started looking for another job and was able to land a job at Control Data Corporation. The way I landed that job was because William C. Norris, who was the head of Control Data, he believed in doing things to help the community. And so I was brought into a group called Professional Services. For the first 2 or 3 years that I worked for them, my payroll, or I was not paid through my department, but came through a fund that was at their headquarters. After about 3 years and being able to prove myself, I was just, my payroll came right through the regular department after that. I had a 15-year career with Control Data, loved it, left Control Data and worked for the University of Minnesota for about a year. That was probably the only job that I've ever had that was not a very good fit. I was very used to the business world, but not the academic world. And left the university after 1 year. And then worked for Courage Center here in Golden Valley for about, I think it was about 12, 15 years. And because I knew COBOL, I got snatched away from Courage Center to work on Y2K projects for a company called Harman Auto Glass. And I was with Harman for about 10 or 11 years. And finally, Harman got sold and we got shut down. I spent a great deal of time trying to find another position. I came in second place 6 times. I do believe that my disability, having no arms and one short right leg, played a big factor in me coming in second place a number of times. I ended up on Social Security disability, and about 7 years ago, Hy-Vee came into New Hope, a Hy-Vee grocery store, and I just wanted to get something that I could do part-time, and I started working for them about 7 years ago. I've been with them. I work 18 hours a week there. I am considered a customer service rep, and what I do is I can either greet customers at the front door, or I help customers find things out in the grocery store. I intentionally tried to learn where all the products were, and I even have staff that come up to me and ask me, where do I find such and such? And I enjoy doing it because I love interacting with people.
That is awesome. And there's definitely some more there that I'm going to circle back with you when we get further down in the questions, because I know you've had to have some barriers and had to break down some barriers. So I look forward to digging deeper into your long, distinguished career. Mr. Jeremy, I have not forgotten about you. Would you like to briefly talk about your career and education journey?
I mean, after that, Paul is much more interesting. Can we just skip? Okay.
No.
So my name is Jeremy Whalen. I did not perform very well at school growing up. I had, still do have ADHD, which caused some significant learning delays. School was never really my forte. So when I graduated from high school, I decided to enter the workforce, and I worked for Circuit City. Within about a month, I was almost fired because I lied to my boss, because I didn't understand why restocking fees exist. And rather than fire me, they said, well, we're going to put you somewhere else within this company. And about 6 months later, they had started their computer repair division, and I was running the computer repair division for St. Cloud, Minnesota. Within about 4 or 5 years, they closed the doors forever, and I realized I needed to go to school. I went to school, and I met the love of my life, who has been incredibly helpful in my own mental health journey and kind of securing some of the issues that I grew up with. And really just coming to terms with the fact that you need to recognize when you have a disability and really focus on becoming the best version of yourself, as opposed to trying to fit into the form that society really has for you. I got very lucky, and I was working for several different companies. Because IT tends to have some good turnover, I jumped around a bit, but I landed a position at General Mills about 5.5 years ago, and was hired on full-time at that point. And I turned some of my disabilities into strengths, but I still work incredibly hard to kind of manage the disabilities that I have. And just know that if your disability is an invisible disability, we're out there. All of us who have to deal with depression or anxiety or personality disorders, just know that there are other folks out there, and that you can do it.
A common theme that I'm hearing from all 3 panelists, and what you'll hear later on from Dr. Andre Watson, is disability shaping sort of your path, or having to do things differently because of your disability, or people treating you different from your disability. And I want to get a little bit deeper into that. I'm gonna circle back to Paul real quick, and then I'm going to come to you, Carrie. How has, Mr. Paul, how has your disability impacted your path? And I know you mentioned how you felt like you came in second place 6 times. Could you sort of elaborate a little bit more, and you know what sort of gave you that feeling, or how has your disability affected your path throughout your career?
So, like I was sharing earlier, I worked for Control Data Corporation for a while. I am so thankful for their program that they had on social responsibility, because it allowed me to get into the door at Control Data Corporation, and gave me the opportunity to prove myself that I could do a job. One of the things that I would do at Control Data is we had customers that were outside of Control Data. One of them was 3M. So I spent over a year doing programming support at 3M for Control Data Corporation. A lot of my work at Control Data was done for internal customers. And I really, truly believe that if Control Data hadn't started going downhill and it eventually closed, that I would have spent my entire career there. When I left Control Data to go to the University of Minnesota, I was contacted by someone that used to work at Control Data that was now working at the University of Minnesota, and found that I knew I was looking around, and that person was the one that hired me at the University of Minnesota. It was an interesting experience because, like I said, I was used to business world, and this was academia, and they are so different. They are just, the whole mindset is different. At Courage, when I got hired at Courage Center, I did know the director, the head IT person there, and I believe that knowing that person and going in for an interview and selling myself really helped. I did enjoy my years at Courage Center. I was responsible for quite a few things there. At that time, I supported their accounts receivable, accounts payable, their fund accounting, human resources, and payroll systems. When I got enticed to leave Courage Center was because of Y2K, and I guess I can share this with everybody. It came with a 65% pay increase. So I went from a nonprofit to a for-profit company. Spent the next, like I said, spent the next 10 years with Harmon, and there, when I interviewed there, I did not know anybody there. So I really did try to sell myself. I probably oversold myself a little bit. I think when I got there, I realized the job was going to be a little more challenging than I thought. And then, but I did enjoy my years there also until they got shut down. One of the things that I learned during my career, especially when you wanted to move around, was it wasn't necessary, not necessary about what you knew, but a lot of times who you knew. If you knew somebody on the inside and having a disability, it was much easier to get an interview and get a job offer because people kind of knew who you were and knew your background. One of the, let's see, that also happened at Hy-Vee when I decided I wanted to work there after retiring. I knew somebody on the inside, and they helped. They really talked me up, I guess, to the human resources people, and went in for an interview and had all this information on Hy-Vee that I wanted to, I wanted to make, tell them that, hey, I'm interested in your company. I know about your company. And my interview lasted about 5 minutes before they offered me the current job that I have.
Nice. So it's very important, as what I'm getting from you, to network and be able to sell yourself. Right?
Yes.
as we all know, as being people with disabilities, a lot of it is sort of convincing other people that you can do your job. Although we may know that we could do it, it's a lot of it is convincing others that we can do it.
Paul, may I share one other thing that happened to me? And
Sure.
when I was looking for another job before I ended up on Social Security disability, I would regularly get comments, or I get emails from places. Can you be here in 1 hour for an interview? Oh, you've got such a rich background, and you've got all this knowledge. We really could use you. And I would literally break my butt to get to these interviews. And I would spend the first 30 to 35 minutes of the interview trying to make the person comfortable with me.
Yeah.
And many times after going for the interview, I would never hear another word back from the company.
Wow. To my other panelists, if you guys ever want to jump in, you know, and have like mine experience, please feel free to do so. You know, you don't have to wait for me to address you. Do any of you, Carrie or Jeremy, have a likewise experience? Or Carrie, if you wanted to take this, do you have any insight into how your disability has shaped your career path? I know you spoke about when you wanted to be a counselor, but then you had some speech issues. So
Yeah. So I, after college, my disability progressed. I have a neuromuscular disease that causes weakness, and it really started affecting my ability to breathe. So I elected to get a tracheostomy, and with that comes speaking challenges. Obviously, I can talk, but I can't all the time because my lungs just can't handle it. So after I recovered from that surgery and kind of got life back on track, I worked with vocational rehab services on finding a new path. And after a career inventory, grant writing came out as kind of an option for me. Writing was always a skill that I have had, and you know, I figured I can work from home. I don't need to use my voice, so that was the path I was on. And I did some internships, and then some volunteering with nonprofits, and it all kind of led up to potential career opportunity at a nonprofit, but I needed to get some some additional education to make up for my lack of work experience. Because you know, in college, I just couldn't do college and working at the same time. Physically, it would have been impossible. So VRS ended up supporting a master's degree for me, and I spent 2 or 3 years after graduation trying to get a grant writing position. And I had all the qualifications, but just could not get anything. And then I reconnected with someone I had met volunteering, and at that organization at Metropolitan Center for Independent Living, there was a part-time position that was opening up. And it wasn't what I had planned to do. It wasn't grant writing. It was more systems change work and trying to help people advocate for themselves with the legislature. And I didn't get that job, but MCIL contacted me and was like, hey, we really like you. We have this other position open, and it was a full-time position where I would be working one-on-one with individuals, kind of similar to what I envisioned with counseling. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. You know, I wasn't prepared for full-time work. But everything in the job description really fit my passions, helping people advocate for themselves, connecting to community and government and nonprofit resources, just everything was a good fit that way. So I knew I would kick myself if I didn't try it out. And it's been 5.5 years now. I am now the manager of that team, and working for a center for independent living has been the best experience. Their aim is to have 50% or more of employees as people with disabilities. So I'm in an organization that understands accommodations. I'm able to not use my voice 2 days a week to give my body a rest, and they understand that. I'm still able to do my job. So I learned through that path that tailoring my job search to what I perceived as my limitations was not the right way to go. I, from the start, should have gone the path of doing what I really felt passionate about. Because once I found that position that I was really passionate about, everything kind of fell into place. So that was kind of my big learning lesson, is don't tailor your job search to your perceived limitations, because there are accommodations that can make jobs that you're passionate about, make them work for you.
I would like to thank you for saying that. That's very insightful, and you managed to verbalize, I think, what everyone on this panel has felt, and put it out there and into words. I think as we dive deeper, we'll see that as a theme of going out there and try to pursue that career that you've always wanted as best as you could achieve it. So would you say counseling was your number one career that you wanted to do?
That's what I intended to do. And that was, decades ago when I was first exploring college and college programs. I had intended to get my master's in counseling and work with, my goal was to work with teen girls. I ended up being a women's studies major, and so I wanted to work with, empowering young women, and yeah, I don't exactly do counseling right now, but I am working one-on-one with people with disabilities and having that kind of individual impact on people. And I feel that my disability allows them to trust me when I talk about, that I understand their frustrations with the system, or their frustrations with potential employers, in the way that they may stereotype their disabilities. So I feel like my disability, I have a trach, I use a power wheelchair. It's a noticeable, visible disability, and it really has been an asset to my position.
Awesome. Now, touching on that, Jeremy, I'm going to come over to you. And again, if anybody wants to add, feel free. How has your disability impacted your path? Now, I know you shared in your intro about getting almost getting fired by your manager, and you having an invisible disability. So how has all of that, if you can maybe go into a little bit more, how's that impacted your career choice, and how has it brought you to your current career? And is your current career, is it the end of your journey, or do you see yourself eventually moving on to something else? I know there's two questions there, so
Yeah,
dissect it.
and it's good. And funny enough, there's a question in the chat too that kind of can I've had some experience with, so I might be able to kind of detail it. So my disability really came, I hate to use this term, but I was very lucky in its presentation. I am for those of you who are unable to see me visually, I am a white male presenting person. I am not going to claim that I haven't had numerous it's been incredibly easy, I guess, for me to live and function in society just because of my own presentation. And whenever we're talking about a disability that is invisible, I think that there is a normalcy that people presume upon you that makes it easier in some regards. And unfortunately, it also can make it difficult when you don't live up to expectations of others around you. But in terms of my journey, because of the fact that I have some learning disabilities and some trauma in my childhood, it made it difficult for me to deal with school. And so I barely graduated my classes on time. I graduated dead center of my class. And then when I went to college, I had similar issues. And I think the one thing that I can really mirror for a lot of the folks who are out there who may have issues with mental health, issues with personality disorders, or the one in the chat was mentioned as OCD, is really recognizing that you need to push for your own advocacy at every possible moment. And it's because there are systems in place, but there are systems in place for people, but they aren't necessarily looking for you to just have them. It's almost like you have to fight for the resources that you need at every possible moment. And when it comes to advocating for yourself, I look at the rest of this panel and I have kind of the I feel like I don't have a reason to complain. Like I'm not worthy of any attention within this because my disability was not A or B. So I just long rambling answer, I guess, that doesn't necessarily call to the point that you're looking for. But when it comes down to it, you need to be your own advocate, and you need to recognize that your disability is real and that your disability is worthy of attention, and that, you know, just because you may have it better than someone, it doesn't make it any less of a struggle for you. So when it comes to kind of my own mental health and my anxiety and my depression and any of the other like disorders that I deal with on a regular basis, the reason that I have been so lucky in terms of my career has been my outward appearance as opposed to any of my inward. Everything inward I've had to struggle and focus on bringing my best self. So I don't know if that's a good answer, to be honest. I think I just rambled for
No, it's fine. I mean, there's no, I mean, the answer is what's inside of you, and there's no good and there's no bad, and you know, you don't definitely need me to say this, but you know, you are more than worthy and you know, qualified to be here and to share your experience, because it's all valuable, and you bring a different, you know, disability to light that, quite honestly, a lot of people either don't know about or don't want to know about. So the more you can speak about your mental illness, I think it helps everyone, because it's one of those disabilities, because you're not walking with a cane, or you're not in a wheelchair, or you're not in, you know, on crutches, or, you know, they can hide it and ignore it, and it shouldn't be. So I thank you for being here and being able to open up and share with us. And I hope that, you know, I continue to make you feel comfortable enough to do so.
Yeah, and please, for the panelists here and for everybody else who's listening, my imposter syndrome is something that I deal with. I think that that's incredibly common for most folks. But I guess one thing I can also touch on here that I think, Carrie, you nailed perfectly: don't paint yourself into the box that you think you fit in. All of the positions that I've been in terms of my own career, I have managed to remove my own negative ego from them and talk about the things that I can be. And those have been the positions that have been the best for me. Whether or not they were more stressful and they hurt my own mental health in certain ways is irrelevant. The times where I have kind of said to myself, you are worthy and valid of this role, have been some of the greatest parts of my journey. They've been some of the greatest roles that I've ever been in, and they've been some of the greatest learning opportunities for how much I can actually do. So just again, Carrie, you nailed it. Like, don't paint yourself into the box you think you are in because of your education or because of your disability. Paint yourself with the brush that your friend would, because they would tell you all of these amazing things that you can do, and that really can dictate your entire career journey. So
Awesome. That's a great segue into the next question that I'm just going to throw out there, and who wants to answer can answer this one first. What tools have you all used to achieve your career success? Who wants to start with that one?
If I can, just because I'm still unmuted, I have, similar to Paul, it's been building that network, finding people. Like a physical tool is great, and there have been, when I was in college, one of the things that I didn't even realize was available for me, because I have ADHD, I could request alternate testing, and that was great. But I realized it year 4 1/4 as opposed to year 1, because nobody really advocated for it. So like the tools that I have used in terms of my depression have been medications, or they've been counseling, but really it's been people. Finding and surrounding myself with people who actively care for my well-being has been one of the greatest tools. So that's my take on it, is the tool has been finding the community, building the community around me that's been able to help.
Awesome.
And now I'll shut up so other people can talk.
No, that's perfect. That's awesome. And I think we'll hear that reflected also in my interview with Dr. Andre. Paul or Carrie, you guys want to take a stab at the question? What tools have you used in your career success?
I guess I could comment a little bit on a couple of the tools that I've taken from one job to another. I'm gonna bend away so that I can. What I have, I'm holding in my mouth currently, and I'll drop it now, is a dried up felt tip pen. Because of not having any arms, I had to learn how to do keyboarding with my teeth. So when I first started in computers, we didn't have mouses, we didn't even have PCs, and I had to learn how to do everything via the keyboard. And one of the things that I did that helped me was I didn't exactly memorize the keyboard, but I knew just about where every key was on that keyboard. and I didn't have to do a lot of, I call it the search and peck method. I was able to, I got to the point where I could probably type in about 30 words a minute into using a keyboard. When mouses came along, I thought they were wonderful. I learned how to do the mouse with my foot, and still do that today. The other thing that I have, and if I were back on my computer, I'm on my wife's right now, I had somebody build me a special stand for my keyboard. I used to have to bend way over to be able to type on a keyboard. Well, somebody made me this device that I can set on a desk, and it puts the keyboard up at a level where I'm not having to bend over very far. And I've taken that went with me from one job to the next job to the next job, and now here at home.
That's awesome. That's especially starting, I mean, now with technology, there's so much more out there. I often joke, because I was born in '79, and so I was, around '90s, 2000s when all this technology started coming out, that if I was born now, as a totally blind person, I would probably have been able to accomplish maybe a lot more, probably gotten into a lot more trouble with my friends now that there was Uber, being able to travel around without having to rely on trains that didn't talk and count stops. So, Gary, do you have anything to add to that? Like, what kind of tools have you used or are using?
I think technology is just the biggest help. So on, the days that I don't have my voice, I can still meet with people over Zoom, and I can type my responses in the chat. So, and I can text clients, I can email, all of those technology pieces are what make me able to continue working even on the days when I can't talk. So that's been kind of the biggest, but also connecting with people that understand the law is helpful too. When I started with MCIL, I had some accommodations issues, not with them, but with the office that I was working out of at the time, the state office, and MCIL helped navigate those issues. It wasn't anything major, but just having someone on your side that understands the ADA laws and what companies are required to provide for accommodations is just really important. So if you're worried about, can I get a desk that's going to fit my needs? Can I get, if you have a physical disability where you can't pick up your phone, like the office phone, can I get, some sort of modification for that? Just knowing that there are laws out there that require companies to provide those reasonable accommodations. That's huge to opening up your world to different job opportunities.
So the theme is technology, not necessarily high tech, as in Paul's case or Mr. Paul's case. Something as simple as a pen, being able to adapt and use tools that are in your environment, whether they're high tech or low tech. Would you all agree that that's a common theme in your success, or identifying things that you could use to help you achieve your goals?
Yeah, I would even take it a step further. Like, it's very nice that technology is starting to catch up and we're seeing research being done into for people who have either limited mobility in their arms and legs or no mobility, there are new and emerging technologies that are enabling access to the computer or access to, those are great. But even just the ability that we have now as opposed to 10 or 15 years ago with calendaring, with scheduling meetings, with taking meetings remote. Everybody, this is not a white background that's behind me. This is like, I am completely in a different area than every single person on this call. And for somebody with anxiety who may have trouble leaving their house, or with somebody who has mobility issues leaving their house, this is one of the greatest things that I've seen for equality in the workplace, of being able to grab a phone and dial into a meeting 12,000 miles away, rather than getting into a car and driving that car to a place where I then have to park and pay for parking and requiring accommodations then with my own work site to set up my computer. Like, this has been an amazing equalizer for disabilities and everything. Like, I am relatively new to disability advocacy and trying to advocate it for any specific place, but like, this has been so monumental, and everyone that I have ever heard has been saying, like, the ability to talk from a desk that is somewhere away is number one on helping becoming more efficient for those who need an accommodation. So
yeah, I would definitely echo that as well. And I want to see what the rest of the panel thinks, with COVID sort of bringing into the forefront video conferencing, or not having to be in a location, sort of opened up the world to more people with disabilities to sort of get jobs. I know a lot of the limitations when I was job searching throughout the times were seeing jobs that I would like to get, but knowing that they were far away, and the main concern was transportation. How would I get there? Or for interviewing, how would you even get to the interview? So do you, Paul and Carrie, have any of those similar things? I know Mr. Paul, you spoke before about having to break your butt to get to an interview, that they want to do there, within the hour, and going through all of that just to get there, and then them just not returning your call. Like, would you echo that this technology or video has sort of helped?
Yeah, I think this kind of like what we're doing today, we're all in different locations. And I think one of the neat things that for people with disabilities that this opens up, especially if you're doing a job search, you don't necessarily, like we're in the Twin Cities here, you don't have to look just in the Twin Cities anymore for a job. You can look at possibilities on the East Coast, on the West Coast, or in different cities. And it's becoming the norm more and more that a team of people working for a company are not necessarily all in the same location. Hold on one second. We got a phone ringing here. I'm gonna mute myself for a moment.
Okay. Carrie, do you want to do you have anything to add to that while Paul takes care of that?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Jeremy and Paul have said about how technology and Zoom and this new environment where we can work remotely, it really has improved so many people with disabilities, improved their lives. And for me, I was working in an office for the first, I guess it was 3 years of my job. And with my physical disability, it takes time to get ready for work. It takes time to unwind when I get home from work. And so I had maybe 2 hours in the evening where I could, watch TV or, hang out with friends or whatever. And now it's taken away all of that getting ready time and energy. And my commute is like 4 feet from my bed. And, we know in the Zoom world, we don't even have to get out of our pajama pants. We can do our video chatting and not put that energy into things that aren't directly related to our jobs.
Right.
So it has helped me a lot with my health and my energy.
Thank you for sharing that. I would definitely echo that sentiment that it takes a lot of the extra energy out of your day. Just knowing that you had that commute, whether it was an hour or half an hour or 2-hour commute, and whether you had to walk part of it or take the train. I know being a blind person, you would just pray that the path that you had memorized, that they weren't doing construction that day, that would throw a wrench into it, or you're coming home and the train is canceled. That's just extra anxiety that you would get just to get to work, and then have to do work, and then have that stress of hoping that you could get back home without any obstacles. So yeah. We're getting close to time, and I want to be able to show Dr. Watson's video. So I'm going to ask each of you to sort of give some sage advice out there. I'm going to ask you guys to share some advice that you can give to other professionals living with disabilities. What advice would you give them? And you can take a couple of seconds or so to think, and then whoever wants to answer can speak up.
I guess I would say just what I said earlier, don't limit yourself based on your own perceptions of what you can do. Because we are always the hardest on ourselves, and we focus on our weaknesses, our faults, and as Jeremy said, that can put us in a box that we don't belong in. So don't limit your job search based on your perceived limitations.
Thank you for that, Carrie. Paul or Jeremy, want to go next?
Yeah, well, comment. What I would like to say to people is, don't underestimate yourself. I think we want to underestimate ourselves of what we can do or what we're capable of doing based on what other people say to us. And I think it's really important to look at yourself in a positive manner, know that your skills are good, and that I firmly believe that the right thing will come along. It might take a little while, but it will come along.
I would definitely echo that as well, Paul. I will just briefly share before I let you go, Jeremy, that I mean, when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, and knowing that I couldn't be a police officer or a soldier, I didn't know where I was going to end up. And, times I was in between jobs, I would get down on myself and say, I'm not going to be anything. I'm never going to get that job. And my wife would always say, you're 29 or you're 30, give it time. And I would say later on, I'm like late 30s, early 40s now. I am, in that spot where I never thought I would actually be. And that's because I had someone there sort of keeping me out of the doldrums. So that's I think that's very good advice, Paul, Mr. Paul. Thank you for that, and Carrie as well. Jeremy, what advice would you give to other professionals with disabilities?
Yeah, I would so just first and foremost echo what you guys have said. Like, don't paint yourself into a corner. You are your own worst critic. the two kind of touch points I guess I would make is surround yourself with people who are going to help you succeed. And I think that that's been the most difficult part, is recognizing that there are friendships I can't maintain anymore because I need to be the best version of myself, and that person isn't bringing out that version of myself. But the second thing that I would say is just continue to be your own advocate. One of the things that I found so far in healthcare specifically is just a lack of understanding a disability, and it not just mental health, but literally everything. You need to continue to advocate for yourself at every single possible turn, and it's hard. It is a constant battle that you will have, sometimes against your own head, sometimes against a medical establishment, sometimes against friends and family, but you need to continue to advocate for yourself, and that is how you can push through. I've had numerous friends who have contemplated or attempted suicide. They continued to advocate for themselves, and they are able to get past their mental health struggles. Don't seek normalcy, meet yourself where you are, and continue to advocate. That would be kind of my statement.
I thank you for that. And that's perfect segue into Dr. Watson. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to come back and join you guys after we show this video to wrap up. I think this will be a perfect time for us to share the video. So we can go ahead and play that. We'll be back afterwards.
Okay, thank you, Paul. The video will begin with the title slide, Barrier Breakers, National Disability Employment Month, and a photo of Dr. Andre Watson. Dr. Andre Watson identifies as male. He is a dark-skinned male. Here we go.
I'm here with Dr. Andre Watson, clinical psychologist. Welcome, Andre. Thank you for agreeing to sit down with me and have a conversation about your journey and how you got to where you are today as a successful professional with a disability. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Paul. It's great to be here. It's great to share my own life experience. My name is Dr. Andre Watson. I'm a clinical psychologist that works just outside of Philadelphia. I see a whole host of different clients, from kids to families to couples, individuals, adults, working on a bunch of different issues, from whether that might be anxiety or depression, or getting the best out of their relationships, stress on the workplace, or even adjustment to blindness. I enjoy the work I do, and I'm glad to be here today to talk about my journey with becoming a clinical psychologist and working as one.
Well, thank you, Andre. I will disclose that I've known you since I was a teenager, so I've got a chance to see your journey to where you are today. But for the panel today, what brought you to this current career, and was it choice or was it chance?
Oh boy, there was a lot of both. You know, I was in the right place at the right time, and the right people were in my life. And so we did, know each other early on when I started this. And so even as our paths crossed, that was a real integral piece to me becoming a psychologist. You know, before I lost my eyesight, at the age of 11, everybody gave me a chance. They said, you know, be whatever you want to be when you grow up. Be a policeman, be a fireman, be an NFL star. Whatever you want to do, shoot for the stars. And after I lost my eyesight, I realized that people weren't really saying that. You know, I was a kid that enjoyed helping around the house. I enjoyed doing the dishes, helping my grandmother, um, going to the corner store, carrying groceries, giving up my seat on the bus. And then after I lost my eyesight, I realized people were treating me differently. And I didn't like that. I at that point, I figured that being a police officer wasn't going to be my thing.
Yeah,
And
me
being
too.
and being a surgeon wasn't going to be my thing either. But I have a mom who's a teacher, and so she really pushed education and hard work. And not only is my mom a teacher, but she also coached sports. And my stepfather is a military vet. So you think I had it easy? No way. Um, Coaches don't just give directions; they shout them, they yell them, they expect you to try your best. But also coaches give you space to make mistakes and to figure things out and to improve. And that was great for me, especially after I lost my eyesight. I wasn't expected to be perfect and I wasn't expected to get everything right. My mom expected me to try. Um, when my room was messy, she said, "This room is messy. You need to clean it up." And I had expectations for myself to do it, but one time I tried to get out of it. I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I can't see it." She said, "Well, you better get on your hands and knees and figure it out." And so that's basically what my life has been about, is get on your hands and knees and figure it out. If there's a will, there's a way. And so I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and jump in at any point, Paul.
Yep. Okay, I got you.
So I didn't know what I wanted to be. And my mom used to keep me in a lot because she was protective over me. And she decided, now this is I'm dating myself here. She decided that she was going to get me my own landline and have it installed in my bedroom. And that was the best thing for me. Because I used to like to talk on the phone.
Mhm.
And she knew that. And one time she said to me, I hear you talking to people. Sounds like you're a good listener. Sounds like you give people good advice. I was just being a friend. I was just interested in hearing what people had to say and understanding who they were and sharing about myself. And she said, maybe you might want to do psychology. And so that's what started my journey, educationally, and my interests.
Right.
And then when I got to graduate school, after I finished college, um, I wanted to be a psychologist, and so I did apply to different schools. And I didn't get in the first year. I had applied to a few schools and I didn't get in anywhere. And one school was actually, I remember one guy said, "Oh, he said to my mom at the end of my interview, you have a special son here." And then I got a letter that I didn't get in. So I wasn't feeling that special.
Right.
And and another school, I was talked into, maybe getting a different degree or maybe something that wasn't so difficult. And then at another school, they told me that they didn't know how to teach me because I was blind. and that they weren't familiar with blind psychologists. And I had taken the GREs, and I didn't do well because I had a reader that was reading words incorrectly, and I didn't know how to correct them. I didn't know how to tell them how to read for me faster or slower. And so I didn't do well the first time, and I was told that that was the reason why they were going to say I couldn't get in. So I got a lot of materials, reading materials, tapes, anything I could put my hands on to learn better, to work on my vocabulary. And I ended up increasing my score significantly, where the next year I couldn't be denied. And so I ended up going to Widener. And it was tough there at times because I was told that there were certain classes I shouldn't take because I couldn't see.
For some of those
And
classes, do you
one
remember
of
which classes?
one of the classes was teaching me about the Rorschach, which is the test with ink blots. And when the dean found out that there was some chatter about me not needing to go to the class, she told me, you better go anyway. And I learned so much. And what I did was I took these Rorschach cards and I took them to my old elementary school, and I found an old teacher of mine. It was either Miss Cook or Miss Ballowender, who were the Braille teachers. And they actually did tactile drawings of every picture. And after that happened, the professor was floored that I was able to get that, to understand the test, to understand how the test is scored, and understand what it means. And then I ended up writing my my dissertation on adjustment to blindness in adolescence. And so I was congratulated on that, and it was well received. And I believe that I ended up teaching the school all about blindness.
Right.
And since then, they've had a number of students who are blind to enter their program. Absolutely. I think it's about self-advocacy.
Right.
We have to be able to stand up and speak up for ourselves. You know, when we went on our Gold Ball trips, there was one trip we were all supposed to go together, and we got separated. And I ended up traveling across the country with another one of our teammates, Daryl. And we were on our own. And I think I was 21 and he might have been 18 or 16 or something. And people were telling us, like, you know, you can't walk around here. You can't, like, when we got to rest stops, you can't get something to eat. You're blind. He said, listen, well, we got to eat.
Yeah, stay on the
We
bus.
got to find our things. What'd you say?
They tell you, stay on the bus. Stay on the bus. Don't
Stay
get
on the
off.
bus, sit down, don't do anything. And that's the message we're taught as blind people. I'll take care of it for you. Don't worry about it. So when we give up our ability to advocate for ourselves, we give the control to somebody else. Now they know what we like. Now they know what we're supposed to have. Now they're supposed to make decisions for us. And I was determined that I was going to be the captain of my own ship. And so, yeah, so I think that's a key component here, that we have to continue to speak up and say what it is that we need and want, and teach people that we're not just expecting somebody else to do everything for us.
But what advice would you give to other professionals living with disabilities?
There's a lot, but I will say that for other professionals that have disabilities, I would encourage them. One is to get resources. You can reach out to different agencies. You can reach out to your agency for resources. You can reach out to your Associated Services for the Blind. You can always reach out to me at yourvisionforlife.com. So you have to have resources. secondly, if you are experiencing a vision loss and you can still see, I've been encouraging people to get as many skills as you can. Computer skills, get more education, or get a trade, or get some kind of skills so that you're still marketable if you lose more sight or a remainder of your sight. And 3, I would encourage people never to give up, and that it is going to be difficult, and that for a day or two you may say I quit, but you always have to restart. You always have to jump start. Some days you're going to make a lot of mistakes. I did it. I continue to do it. Growing up, I poured orange juice into my cereal.
Oh yeah.
I wore mismatched shoes. I called, the wrong young lady the wrong name. I've done all those things and was embarrassed, and I know you have too.
Yeah.
So never give up, and reach out to people that are also blind. We have to support each other. Don't be ashamed. It's hard. It is very difficult, and some people really do have a problem with accepting blindness. So I would say reach out and get support, or get a counselor. Talk to somebody who can help you get through it.
Awesome. Are we back?
We are back, Paul.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to thank Dr. Andre again for sitting down with me for that interview. I think one thing that, or many things that we could all take from that video, and it's sort of prophesized itself and reflected in the panelists here today, the common theme, right? We heard networking, advocacy, never giving up. Carrie saying, don't paint yourself into a box. And I think that was all reflected both live today and from the interview that I had with Dr. Andre. Now, panelists, I want to give some time to thank you all for joining us today and sharing your stories and your journeys and giving advice. And we want to also give time for any questions and answers, both from the attendees or from ourselves, as well as we can network and share advice amongst ourselves. And then we're also going to have Lynn, our fine president and fearless leader, share some resources that we are going to give for people attending today that will help you in your professional journey. So that being said, are there any outstanding questions and answers out there? You just want to put them into the chat, or raise your hand, or if you have it, one person can come off mute and ask your question, and we can have the panel answer it.
Paul, we did get one that says from Diego, what is the best way to be an ally to colleagues with disabilities?
Okay, awesome. Who wants to tackle that one? Paul, Mr. Paul, Jeremy, Carrie? It's the best way to be an ally to a colleague with a disability. Now,
Well, I would say, don't treat me differently than you treat anybody else in your fellow employees. Treat me just like one of your fellow employees, because that makes me feel part of the group. And being part of the group, being part of a group of professionals that are doing kind of the same job, I think is very, very important.
Yeah, so I can speak to the corporate thing, and then I can speak to my own personal. So in terms of like the corporate thing that I could tell you is just continue to push your company towards advocacy. And that's something that, regardless of the size or scope of the company, just continue to push them towards a direction of I don't want to say believing that disabilities exist, but just pushing that disabilities are real, that they require they require attention, and that they need to be accommodated, and they need to be more accommodating in all facets.
Disability awareness, I think, is what you're.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Awareness of disabilities, understanding and empathy of disabilities. In terms of me personally, don't expect that don't expect that what helps you will help me, because that's been the number one thing is, oh, I'm patting you on the back right now, telling you that I'm empathizing. Well, I have a touch issue and I don't like that. Please don't touch me, right? Just don't assume that what's going to work for you is going to work for me. And I think asking a lot of those questions when it relates to touch, or when it relates to accommodation, or when it relates to conversation, please don't call me on the phone because I'm an anxious person and I assume that it's, something that it's not. So a text is better for me. But asking me like, hey, I understand that you're feeling down, or, I want to be there for you. What can I do? That has been the big thing that I've told people, is just ask. Don't assume. Don't do something because you think it works for me. Ask. And that will oftentimes lead us in the right direction.
Yeah, that's really what I would echo, is respect someone's accommodations. Like for me, I don't schedule meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays because those are my non-talking days usually. And it's really awesome when my colleagues recognize that and say, oh, I'd like to schedule a meeting. Is this one of your talking days? Can we do this on Monday or Wednesday or Friday? So that's just respecting, understanding, and just respecting boundaries and accommodations.
Thank you guys for that, and I would definitely echo that as well. And it's something that I've learned through my professional journey, just even not from a colleague that's not disabled to a disabled colleague, but even amongst disabled colleagues, what works for you might not work for somebody else. Two blind people don't do the same thing the same way. So, just knowing what works for that person or for the group of people, and keeping an open mind and respecting those differences.
Can I throw something else out too? Be an ally when it's hard. Like it's really easy to, oh, I see that you have a wheelchair, let me open the door, right? And that can come off a little condescending depending on how you're offering it, but like also do it when it's a difficult situation. So a lot of people will say in the office, oh, I just have a little OCD. I know that it's difficult mentioning to them, but say that's not an appropriate term necessarily the way that you're using it, right? And those conversations can be difficult, but just advocate, not just on the day-to-day small things, advocate at every possible moment. And you might have some difficult conversations or some people who look at you a little sideways, but just continue to advocate even when it's something that might cause you a little internal pain. Continue to advocate.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions in the chat room?
Not seeing any, but I'm going to throw one out there that we get a lot from employers that I think the panel could handle really well. So you come and apply for a job, and we do have a budget for accommodations, but I just don't know how to do the accommodations. what would you say to a prospective employer that, say, wants to hire you, but is uncertain on how to accommodate you, and that's the stumbling block to getting you hired?
Do you want to answer that? Start with that answer, Mr. Paul, and then we can go around.
I think that's a great question, Lynn. I grew up in the era, and I don't know about the other panelists. There's always been this great debate amongst at least people that I know with disabilities in the working world, especially when you're out on an interview or whatever. Do you let that prospective employer know ahead of time that you have a disability? I've heard pros to that. I've heard cons to that. In my career, my choice was never to let them know, because I didn't want to get screened out just because I had a disability. I think accommodations should be talked about after the job, when there's a job offer on the table. Talking about them ahead of time, again, my concern would be that that could lead a prospective employer to not make a job offer to you because they don't want to make the accommodations. That's why in my career, I always made sure that I had the things that I needed. I just brought them to the job with me and got them set up and got them going. And interestingly enough, I'm going to share one job accommodation that I get these days at Hy-Vee. Because of my disability, I tend to run a little warm, and in the summertime, I can easily overheat. And so one of the things that I asked them was, I have one accommodation that I would like between about the middle of May to the middle of September. Instead of wearing long, dark pants, which we were required to do, could I wear a nice looking pair of black shorts so I keep myself cooler? And they were very open to that. And so to this day, in the summertime, when I'm working, I'm able to wear nice shorts, black shorts, with the appropriate top.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that with us. Jeremy or Carrie, you guys want to try to answer that question as well?
It is a good question. If you have an HR person that doesn't know how to provide accommodations, I would be, this isn't completely answering the question, but I would be a little wary of working for an organization in which the HR manager doesn't understand accommodations. It is a common thing, you know, people aren't familiar with all kinds of disabilities. For me, that would be a little bit of a red flag, but I would want to go into that meeting with a very clear outline of what I would need to make it as clear and accessible to the HR person. And, you know, you don't want to have to do their job for them, but in cases like this, it may be helpful to say, you know, oh, I need an adjustable desk. Here's an example of what works well for me, and giving them a picture or a link to the product or the physical adaptation that you would need. Yeah, I guess that would be my method of dealing with it.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of say here, I think the unfortunate reality is that many employers, when you say that you have a disability, may have the ability to flag that. And I think that that is a concern, especially as, you know, technology is great. I spoke volumes, and I can speak volumes about how Zoom and Teams have really revolutionized this. But I think that there is, if not completely in practice, there is at least in perception that when you mark yourself as someone with a disability, there is a possibility of removal from the applicant pool. I guess what I would say to that is there are kind of two methodologies. If you've been hired, I think that is the time when you can really truly bring your full list, every single thing that would help you. And don't expect it, because many employers are not going to be able to provide everything, but tell them everything. Don't shortchange yourself by asking, oh, you know, if I just had a desk, it would be, you know, that would be fine. Now, if you need specific mouse requirements because you have carpal tunnel, if you have specific requirements for sight where you need a specific monitor type, or you need a specific glare, or tell them everything at the moment of hiring. And from the corporate side, I would say that corporations are trying to get better and need to get better at having that conversation at the forefront during the interview process. Are there accommodations that can help you with the interview? Are there accommodations that can help you with the initial point of entry? How was applying for this job? How easy was it for you to apply for this job with your, you know, person? And again, companies are starting to glom onto the fact that that needs to be done. But yeah, I guess I would say, just if you are hired, bring everything. Document everything that you need, everything that's going to make it easier for you. Even if it is unreasonable in your own head, you need to tell them, because there is only one way you're going to get those accommodations, and it's if you ask. If you don't ask, you will not get.
That is true. That's an adage I've used and also say to my kids now: if you don't ask, you don't get. And that applies with us as their parents and them at school. So thanks for that, Jeremy. Everybody can take that to heart.
Well, Paul, it's time for us to come to an end. This is, I have learned so much, and thank you so much. Thank you, Carrie, for talking on your non-talking day.
Yes, thank you for that.
And the next time we call you, we'll ask you if it's a talking day. Yeah. But the Paul, Jeremy, Carrie, and Dr. Andre Watson, the stories have been just phenomenal help. I think that Paul Pranghofer's wife works for us, and I learn a lot from her. And she always says that Maureen, by the way, is blind and in a wheelchair. And so she deals with a lot of questions about her capabilities. But she always says that everything would be solved if people could just connect with real people. And that is a part of what our mission is here at WeCo, is to get subject matter experts living with disabilities, digital subject matter experts, together with people who need to learn from them to make websites and software accessible. But also our mission as a mission-based company is to help the public better understand the capabilities and talents of people living with disabilities. So you've all contributed greatly. Paul Day, wonderful job. Thank you so much. You've done just a bang up job with leading your first WeCo panel. Thank you. We're so happy for that. Just to go over real briefly for wrap up, that we do have a slide up with resources. The National Disability Institute, for those of us who are professionals living with disabilities, has some great resources. The American Dream Employment Network is one that I wish had been around when I was transitioning back to work in my late 30s, after being disabled for about 10 years due to mental illness. They have a program that helps you move from Social Security into work. And that transition can be really tricky and really frightening. So it's nice to have people that can help you with that. as I believe Carrie and her organization can help you with that as well. The Small Business Hub at the National Disability Institute is something that I love and use, that has wonderful resources for those of us who are entrepreneurs and business owners living with disabilities. But they also have apprenticeships. And I think apprenticeships can be a really important part of how many of us can gain experience. Carrie talked about volunteering. Our own company, Digital Accessibility by WeCo, has a pretty robust internship program on all of our teams, from digital accessibility to administration to communications and operations. But also for employers and job seekers, the Job Access Network is like the encyclopedia we use for accommodation at WeCo. But it's also got great information for job seekers, and that's paid for with your federal dollars. So please take advantage of it. Our new e-learning platform, WeCollege, is going to be adding a workplace accommodation modules in the new year. So you can reach out to us at theweco.com. We've got a webpage for that. But any other questions, anything you can help with, please contact our public relations team at pr@theweco.com. And with that, I think that we will close out the day. So we can stop recording, Ellen.